So, have you thought about disarming the police? I have a bunch of thoughts on that. And it starts with, are you freaking nuts? This is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms. And in this podcast, I kind of want to explore something I ran across. And, it's from January of 2022. It's been sitting open on a tab on my computer because I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it, but then I kept finding myself going back and forth, going, should I say something? Should I not say something? It's from Duke Center for Firearms Law, which I didn't know existed. However, that being, irrelevant, the title was called Disarming the Police, Blue Lives, Black Lives, and Guns. It's kind of an interesting essay. And it starts with talking about, racial inequality, which, I think by any standard measure we'd have to agree exists. And the author goes into talking about disarming the police versus defunding or abolishing the police. And, she makes a very accurate statement in that there's been no effort to disarm the police in this country. Hallelujah. The author, Margaret Etienne, I think, I may be mispronouncing it. Her premise is that unarmed police work in other countries such as Fiji, Botswana, Iceland, Malawi, Marshall Islands, Samoa, New Zealand, U.S. Virgin Islands, and England. And, we'll get to England in a second, but I'm going to go out on a limb and pretty much say that there's a couple of things that go on with those countries and having unarmed police. Part of it might be that when they take somebody off the street for committing a violent crime, they don't go back on the street, which you can't say the same here, that's for sure. She also makes the premise, and this is where England comes in, that our culture is a lot like that in England. I'm not so sure this lady has ever been to England. And yeah, she does acknowledge, for example, in Northern Ireland, it's like 20% of the cops are armed. In England, it might be, I think it's like somewhere around 5 or 8%. And by the way, that number's going up. When I was a kid, the British police were not armed. Things are changing in England, and they have very, very rigid gun control. And, the other part, too, is comparing us to England. When you start talking about law, they are completely dissimilar. Our laws were based on those of France, which are the rights of the individual versus the rights of everybody else. So, for example, we have somebody they know is dangerous. He kills me. Well, he now has more rights than I had. As opposed to British law, which is, you're way too dangerous to leave out on the street. We're locking you up for a long time. And there you're going to stay. As opposed to, overcrowding in prisons and crap like that, where we're trying to shove people out the door. Okay, so in terms of comparing us to England, we sort of speak the same language. But as far as society and laws, we are very, very different. Now, continuing, this lady seems to fall off the race track, meaning the ethnicity issues, fairly quickly, and goes into the fact that you can't find out how many cops died because there's no way, no one reports it. I'm like, all I did was Google it. Now, it sounds like I'm splitting hairs. The answer is you better believe it. The information is out there. It turns out, on average, about 50 police officers a year are killed in this country. And she also goes on to say the police aren't really in any danger, so the claims they have for carrying a gun are unfounded, because she's claiming that individually you're not at risk, or they're not at risk. And, most people in this country, or most gun owners, their guns are in their house for protection. Well, not for nothing, but if the police could protect me, I might not need a gun in my house. And by the way, I am not slamming the police. Let me just put this right out there. Is the police can't be everywhere. So do I believe they will show up as quick as they can? You better believe it. In fact, I would just venture to guess that the people screaming for disarmament or abolishing the police would be the first ones to call for the police and the first ones to bring lawsuits against the communities or police departments for failing to respond in a timely manner. And so she's calling, a scourge of police violence against civilians in the United States and the disproportionate impact it has on Black and Latino communities. I'm going to go in and say, you know what? Any death is a tragedy. The numbers cited from the author was, I think she used 2020 as her number. There were 241 Black people killed by police, 169 Hispanic, and 457 white. So, white versus minority, I'd say we're running pretty close, hand in hand. Now, I'm not sure, some of her other premises are, worth mentioning, but I'm going to anyway. She actually said that armed police and armed civilians create bad situations. Okay. Sky's blue too. I didn't think you needed me to tell you that. All right, so here's where, we start looking at some weird stuff. The author did bring up one really kind of interesting point, which is, are we running the risk of vigilantism if the police aren't armed or aren't capable of responding? So, what are we talking about? Well, it's very simple. How about Kyle Rittenhouse? Does that sound familiar to you guys? Moron, white kid, who takes a rifle into a riot. I don't know what the laws are, where he was. I'm in North Carolina, and, it actually says it's against the law to bring a gun to a riot. And parades and a whole bunch of other things, but, common sense stuff. So, was he a vigilante? I'm going to go with, yeah, he had no business being there. I mean, maybe he really thought he was going to help out. Or not. I don't know. I can't tell you what was going through his mind at the time. I think, unfortunately, he got away, literally got away with committing crime scot-free. But do I think more of that would happen if you disarm the police? I'm going to go with yes. there are nearly 400 million firearms in American homes. I think it works out to be something like 1.1 or 1.2 guns for every person in this country. And I said it in another podcast, the military only has about 5 million guns. So we outnumber the military, but they got cool stuff, like grenade launchers and, artillery, stuff that, us average people can't compete with. However, most of us have guns for self-defense. Some of us have guns for hunting. Some of us have guns for target shooting. And I forgot the statistic, but it was something like 15% of the people, or it might have been 20% of the people that actually have concealed carry permits carry guns on a daily basis. So if we defund the police and I have a break-in or home invasion going on with somebody armed, frankly, I'd prefer that the police come in armed. The last thing I need the police to do is come in, look down at my body and go, yep, he sure looks dead. I'd rather have them do something unique and exciting, like kill the guy who's threatening to kill me. It sounds weird, but I'm sure some of you may have actually seen this in the news. It showed a body of a guy at a convenience store. It was an armed robber, said, came to rob the store, shot by everybody. It was in Texas. And on a more humorous note, an article starts out, it was actually a guy at a gas station being robbed. Not the clerk, but a guy pumping gas. And I may be misquoting it, but it said something like, the gas was unleaded, but the criminal was not. He went to rob a guy, and the guy shot him. So I guess he died from lead poisoning. At that particular time, there were no police around. Not because they didn't want to be there, but they've got huge areas to cover. So this guy defended himself. And I don't think what the author in this particular article was taking into account is the nature of the crimes that are being committed. Now, it's not just robbery, it's, well, what the hell, I'm going to shoot you just for the hell of it. Or because I can and I don't want you potentially giving a description to the police. Now, have the police had some bad apples? As a matter of fact, yes. I learned this from a police officer buddy who said, well, just because you're a cop doesn't make you a good shot. And the other corollary was, just because you're a cop doesn't make you a smart cop. There are smart people, average people, and dumb people. And unfortunately, the police have a lot of things going on. I don't want to sound like an apologist for the police department, but people make mistakes under stress. In addition to that, you have people make mistakes because they're not incredibly bright. And we've just seen the results of some of that, and latest with police officers being fired for killing somebody. Police officers killing somebody who was already in custody. And now, justifiably so, I think that those police officers were fired and are being charged with crimes. However, do I think that the police put themselves in an inordinate amount of danger? As a matter of fact, I do. They're in danger from a traffic stop to a domestic dispute. Or and I kind of hesitate this because of Uvalde, but what if they have to walk into an active shooter situation